Thank you so much for joining us today, and this is a great way to kind of cap off the evening. I want to start out by sharing a couple of statistics that I ran across as I was doing some research. So, CIOs were surveyed on what's the most important skill that they need, and 5 years ago the answer was technological know-how. Today, it's contributing to corporate strategy and ability to contribute, to make a meaningful contribution to corporate strategy. A couple other statistics I want to share. Most important qualities for a CIO today, the leading categories were leadership, communicating and influencing, partnering with others. And then lastly, 70% of the CIOs surveyed, this was a survey by Forbes Insight, 70% of the CIOs believe that tech trends are increasing the chances of the CIO becoming the CEO. So the role of the CIO changing very dramatically, and I just want to ask very simply for you to start out by telling us why.
Well, I think the IT, if you look at, we've been transforming as humans forever. For 70,000 years, we were hunters and gatherers. Last 15,000 years, we were farmers. The first farmer probably thought he was doing a big transformation, right? And then from there, if you look at even industrial revolution, it's 200 years. IT is only about 30 years or so. It's in our lifetime. So we don't really, there was no title as CIO when I started this profession. I was the head jock or head technical guy or whatever. So we're just figuring the job out. And so it'll going to change. And as the role of technology keeps increasing to the company, it becomes a digital nervous system of the company, the role of the CIO will improve. And all the things you mentioned, unfortunately, people go binary. They think you don't need a technical person anymore. You just need a strategist or leader. That's not how it works. You have to be technical, then you have to add strategy, then you have to add management, then you have to add leadership and collaboration. You can't be a CIO of VMware and say, I'm not a technologist, I'm a strategist. You'll be laughed out of the boardrooms and so on, right? So I think you add more and more dimensions, and it's going to continue to grow. And that's probably why people believe that. I believe CIOs are the best suited now to be CEOs of other companies. I've seen a lot of startups and founders. A lot of them have not worked in a large company. They're high egos, which is why they're successful, but they don't know how operations work. They really don't know. And intellectually, they will not accept it, right? So that's a great role, a number two for a company that's coming up, and eventually the number one role.
I hear so much about, the CIO needs to be involved in strategy and in helping really run a lot of the company. How do you guard against being, just having your just stretched in too many different directions? At what point do you just say, no, I actually really do need to home in on technological innovation?
I'm absolutely the wrong person. I haven't figured out how to say no, so I'm absolutely the wrong person. But what you do is, it's like a Maslow's law of hierarchy kind of things. If your Wi-Fi and network doesn't work, you cannot talk strategy. That makes no sense. So one of the CIOs, I learned from him, he said that if your operation sucks, don't talk strategy. But if your operations is working okay, then don't talk operations. Because if you say you're 99.99% up, then the next question would be, why are you not 100% up? There's no way to go from there. So you need to be a good B student in getting a few things right, but you have to get a B, not an F, and then you graduate. You do have to drop a few balls. And some people are not comfortable. They want to have control. They want to manage every person in their so I call it delegate but not abdicate. You need to develop some skills where you can have respected people come and work for you. And you keep adding more and more, but you cannot drop the basics, because if your data center is not working or your email is not working, you go back to basics. You can't go and say, I'm the cloud guy, I'm the subscription guy. If I was a CEO, I would say, why don't you fix the email first, right?
Yeah.
So,
as you look at your staff, or as you meet CIOs, you're interviewing for a job, what are the qualities that you look for that are indicators to you this person is going to be successful in this very rapidly changing role?
Yeah, I think now humility is going to be very important for me, because this can trip you up. Most of the CIOs and leaders I meet are either not confident, so they portray an arrogance to disguise their lack of confidence. But that's the easiest way to trip. I cannot know everything that's going on in technology. It's just not possible. And I can't go compete with the best of the best in VMware. That's a loser situation. So I think humility is probably one. I tell people to be very authentic, because if you try to be somebody else, it's very, very stressful, right? So it's a lot easier just being myself. I mean, I just drove on 237 and 101, and I came in straight here. And you're going to talk about whatever is on your mind. You know, there's not much time to prepare. So being authentic kind of frees you up quite a bit. I look for that. How is this person going to behave like this on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, or is he going to be a different person? Because that inspires trust in people that you bring. I always ask my receptionists and other people what they think about this person. That's a trick I learned. Because the CIOs who want to interview with me are going to behave well with me and the CEOs and CFOs. But I asked the receptionist, you know, how is this person? You'd be surprised how many decisions I've made just based on her answer.
Well, give me some examples. I want to hear when did somebody...
What do you think about this lady? Or what do you think about this person who came in? He asked the receptionist. And the person would say, you know what, this person just was so rude. She came in late, and then she made it like, you know, I was not registering her quickly. And she said, I'm going to be late for an interview because of you. And I was processing as fast as I can. So they won't volunteer right away, but once you have a trust, they will actually say, I wouldn't hire her or hire him. Or somebody spills a coffee or something and just hope somebody else will clean up. It may not be important to you. He may have the best degree from, you know, the best university, Stanford, whatever, and have a track record. But, you know, we don't want people like that in my team. You wouldn't do that at home. Why would you do that? So you'll be surprised how rude people are with the receptionist, assistant, in somebody else, and then they come back and then they put on their best behavior. So we do that. And the third thing is the world is so connected these days with LinkedIn and so on. I mean, you know, most of the people you had in the previous panel are good friends of mine. So if I'm hiring somebody, I'll ask, you know, Shri or somebody, you know, what do you think about this person? You'll be surprised how quickly that answer comes out, right? So then again, as we be authentic, then, you know, people know who I am and all my flaws, so I don't have to hide it. People know Bask is good, but, you know, don't get into a beer drinking contest with him or something, right? It's okay.
We'll have a chance for that afterward,
Okay.
actually.
I look forward to that.
You've had a very unique perspective on technological transformation, not just from your day-to-day job, but you've actually had to, you know, you've seen it from the perspective of the combination of two very big major technological tech companies, bellwethers. I'm curious to know, I'd love to get some of your insights from how that has happened, what worked and what didn't work as you were watching the merger of these two massive businesses.
Yeah, I think he's talking about, for people who don't know, I'm also, last 2 years I was the CIO for Dell Technologies when they merged with EMC as well. So I was in VMware, before that I was at Honeywell and J&J and so on. So when the merger happened or acquisition happened, Michael actually asked me to say, can you help me with the integration and merger? Yeah. And there were 3 or 4 objectives to do. One is you have to save money. You can't bring two companies together and spend more money on IT. So practically, you know, this was not a debate. The CFO didn't have to give me a target. I gave myself a target, which was higher than what he expected. You have to showcase digital transformation. You know, you can't say you're a tech company and not showcase digital transformation. So you have to showcase that you're the best in the business. And then you have to create, you know, the customers, that's number one. The customer should not feel that this merger is slowing anything down. Now, you know, our sales actually went up after the merger. It's continued to grow. We haven't really stopped shipment because of that. That was number one priority. And then we also had the complication of going IPO and going public again. And I know Zoom was here and they went IPO, and I'm very happy for them. I'm an early investor in them, so I'm delighted. But, you know, a large company going IPO, which has been private for a long time, is complicated. So we have 4 or 5 objectives we discussed. Then I landed, and I forgot a few lessons in life. I landed there, and we had to fix their digital experience. So here's what we're going to do with your VPN. This is how we're going to fix your Wi-Fi. This is what we're going to do with your end user experience. And you need to get to a hybrid cloud environment. You know, of course, we came with all the bags of toys from VMware and said, we can fix this. It's no problem. And for the first 6 months, or a good 6 months, nothing was happening. Everybody was nodding. They were trying to run the clock out and saying, this guy's a madman from Silicon Valley. You know, he'll be gone in a few days. And So I forgot the lesson that we all learn is it's people, process, and technology. So you can't just dump technology. And even though I was knowledgeable and I'd done it before in VMware and other companies, just didn't work. So you have to do the hard decision of you have to sort out through the team and say who's a keeper, who's not a keeper, delayer it, remove layers, all the stuff work that nobody talks about. That was a big part that you had to do. And then process transformation. If you look at large companies, small companies, startups, it's okay, but in a large company, they use things like Six Sigma and Lean in the 80s and 90s. You need something like that for digital. So we created something called the Dell Digital Way, which is how we're going to operate as a startup company within a large company. And we had to train people. I mean, if you say agile and things like that, people just read a textbook and assume that you have to create a culture that's unique to yours. Which removed, we had terms like we removed the checkers, all the people who are program managing, somebody who's program managing somebody else who's program managing a project, you remove those layers. Have, stand-ups, people, the actual end users sit in with the developers. The developers are actually on present. We reversed a lot of the outsourcing and other kind of work that we did because you can't outsource your digital technology that easily. So we had to do this process work, which is not very sexy, but very required. And then the technology automatically happened. Right.
How do you change minds when you encounter the resistance, when you encounter the people who say he's going to be gone in 6 months? Well, he didn't go away in 6 months, so how do you change minds when there's a technological transformation that has to happen?
I think you have to camp out there. I bought actually a house in Austin that helped, and and I'll tell you a whole story about don't go to Texas and buy houses, you Californians, because you're raising the prices for them. It's not as expensive as you would think. But anyway, you show that you have to be physically there. You have to be physically available and show up, and then you have to have the passion, and people have to know that this person is pretty serious, and it means that you have to roll up the sleeves and get in the troops with them. And this is why you can't say, let me do the strategy, here are the 4 things. You have to get into details on why is this experience so bad? What VPN are you using? What's the gateway behind it? What is the network? What's the bandwidth? Where is your cloud strategy? Don't say you're just going to a hybrid cloud. Show me a hybrid cloud. Show me the cost of running a private cloud versus public cloud. So you need to get into that kind of a detailed operations review. And then people say, oh, he's just not going to fly and then take off. Operations review are like a root canal, right? We are going to really ask you a lot of questions. The other thing that helped is when 2 companies come together, there's 2 ways to do it. One is to say respect each heritage. That's what a good manager would do. Or you could disrespect both heritage, which is what I chose to do. In the sense, you can create an urgency by saying, both babies are ugly. Okay, we need to go digital. This is where digital is. While we don't have a lot of time to talk. I mean, I'm respectful of the culture and tradition, but we really don't have time to talk about a lot of history. By the time I learn your history and this history and bring the best of the both worlds, we'll be out. So our history is really the competition and customer. So wasn't politically the right way to say, but I said, respectfully, both babies are ugly. So what are we talking here? The future state is here. We need to go to a future state. So that saves some time. But I wouldn't advise all of you to do it. I use sense of humor. It works for me. I try to get a message with a little bit of sense of humor. Because these days, to get good talent, when I was growing up, you could be a autocratic leader and get away with things. These days, people have choices. So if you're pushing people very hard, you need to give them some pressure valve. It's okay to have some fun.
Sun Tzu, right? Always give them a way out.
That's right, exactly. Well, I didn't read it that way, but I kind of say if people want to hit moonshots and they don't quite hit the moon and they fall down a little bit, you need to give them a safe landing. Otherwise, nobody will shoot for the moon, right?
I have a related question about the kinds of conflicts that result in the workplace when you see your role expanding. And we talk about the CIO's role expanding, moving into more and more businesses, doing some of the jobs that maybe fall to the COO or the CEO or even the CFO. What do you do when you encounter resistance to that, to the person who would say, stay in your lane?
Yeah. So I think first is if you put VMware first or Dell first, then you don't have a political agenda. I think a lot of learnings, have been wrong. They tell you how to become politically smart within an organization. And it has worked for some people, but sooner or later you'll get found out, right? Unless you're really strong. So once people again figure out, hey, this person means what is right for VMware or Dell or Honeywell, then 90% of the people align with you. And then most of the times you're talking about, this is really boring work. You can go to the CFO and say, do you want to do this? Do you want to do the new acquisition, new company acquisition, mergers and acquisitions? It's very painful, a lot of process and systems and detailed work and a lot of risks. If I were you, I would make sure the share price is up and not worry about these details. This is what systems guys do. Do you want to do this? If you want, knock yourself out and I'll help you. You'd be surprised how many people don't want to do a lot of the things that IT folks do. But again, it's trust, right? I mean, it's people have to say this person has no agenda, this person drives the right kind of behavior, is very data-driven, very collaborative. And then you actually get a lot more than you ask for. People pretty much say, why don't you give more things to them? So I haven't had that problem. There are one or two small political issues that I've encountered in the career that those people seem to disappear automatically. So there I'll play the clock sometimes and say, this is a loose cannon, it's going to disappear.
You wait them out.
You wait them out. It doesn't take that long a time.
I want to ask about training, and are there ways that you have found that when you recognize that someone who works for you or wants to work for you, or when you recognize in yourself a need to learn a new skill, where do you go? Where do CIOs go for that? Are there places, do we have enough of an infrastructure there to train people to help them adapt? And what are some of the toolkits that you've relied on to give yourself that training or give your staff that training?
I think first is you have to create this learning mindset, and I know everybody says that, but when I mentor a lot of CIOs because you want to give back and you want to have better CIOs. There's certain people do not want to be mentored, right? Which is fine. I'm not getting paid for it. It's just you're doing it for as a give back. Some people kind of, well, I know it, so if you have that kind of mindset, you're going to be not very successful, and nobody is going to waste time mentoring you. When I mentor people, you learn a lot from them. So I do something called reverse mentoring. I mentor especially younger millennials, or not just millennials, people younger than me, which is everybody in the room, and a lot of women, because the good aspiring women have no problems asking for help. It's most of the guys who think they know everything. So that's just my experience. So when you mentor them, it's amazing how much you learn from them. So they describe a situation and you say, this is how my experience tells me to deal with it. Then halfway through I'm thinking, I think that is wrong. I think the way you're describing is right. And so why don't you try your way and see what happens? And they've been right 9 times out of 10. Right, so I'm thinking that is one thing to learn is this reverse mentoring, especially with people with multi-generations, that kind of helps. The other one is anytime an article appears in the paper or an analyst report and so on, it's 3 years behind. So there's no point reading them actually, and so
unless it's Bloomberg. Okay.
Because I see the amount of time, I've been on the other side on how sausage making is done, and I see the amount of time companies spend on marketing their wares that comes up on editorial presentations. So I don't really, it's truthful if it's not fake news, but it's old news by the time it's on the press. So again, yesterday's paper wraps fish is what they say. So, it has to be today's. And if you're in Silicon Valley, that's one of the reasons I moved to the Silicon Valley is I tell CIOs from non-Silicon Valley to say, spend some time here and talk to other CIOs. And I introduce them to a lot of the groups here. I learn a lot from my fellow CIO friends. So if you want to know something about, is AI really real? I call 3 people and they'll say, say it's real because you look cool, but it's really not happening. Okay, that kind of advice you'll never get in if I come to a newspaper, I'm not saying that that's the truth, but that's one example of that is if you can say the buzzwords that are coming in a newspaper and look cool, but you could bet your career on it and lose money, right? So I have a few trusted 100 people or so, fellow CIOs, and we are extremely truthful. Even about our own products, we tell them which version of our products you should use and not use. and so you have a bond. That's probably the best learning.
Where do you have that forum? Is that you guys have your own little Slack channel, or?
Yeah. What was now? What is this? Signal. Oh no, I don't do that. I do it over beer. Maybe the cool. I do it over a lot of physical networking, meeting people. I actually enjoy having conversations with those folks. There are a few forums, like in this forum, if we come, you will see 3 or 4 of us go and have a chat, even here. One of the reasons we come to forums like this is also networking like that. All my answers seem to say alcohol, but I'm coffee. How about we meet over a coffee?
Whatever the beverage.
Yeah. Okay.
In closing, I'd love to get your thoughts on, we've talked a lot about different technologies that are forcing us to be better and adapt and are changing our workplace and our world. What are a few technologies that down the road are ones that are really going to be transforming, and we're going to be talking about this in next year's or in the year after that?
So I think some of these trends come back. I started my career in factory automation and real-time programming and so on, and all those factory jobs disappeared, went overseas, if you remember. A lot of those tasks are coming back, right? A lot of they call it IoT, they can call it real-time, they can call it edge automation. Instead of sending something so many miles away and doing labor arbitrage, you can do it cheaper by just automation and remove some of the mind-numbing jobs. So this trend, people call it IoT, and we call it computer integrated manufacturing 20 years ago, robotics, whatever you want to call it. That is definitely a trend that's time has come, and also consumerization of that is happening at home. So even simple things like if you have a Ring doorbell at home, you're going to come to work and say, why do I use this stupid badge to get in? So you're going to ask those kind of consumerization of technology is going to happen. So that's one. I think that everybody talked about data. Data is going to create some issues. I'm very concerned about privacy. I don't want to put my data with somebody else and trust them. I've become paranoid after seeing some of the bad behaviors. But we need to figure out how to keep the data of the companies and privacy data within the company and use it. I want to use my data. I don't want you to use my data. So techniques on data handling, you absolutely need machine learning and AI to make that happen. So especially on privacy is a pretty big one. The last thing is this robotic process automation. That's no more near term. There's still so much jobs that people are doing, like mind-numbing jobs. I mean, it's really boring. I mean, if you look at IT has spent so much time automating sales systems, financial systems, and so on, but they haven't fixed a lot of the mundane jobs people do. So removing those kind of jobs, which we typically thought of BPO jobs and send it overseas, those things can be really automated with some time spent on it. So those 3 things are real. Of course, blockchain and ML is there, but I haven't found too many use cases yet in an enterprise context for blockchain. It is definitely, it's not the technology that is the issue, it's the creativity. We haven't been creative enough to find opportunities for that. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you.